I want to have a conversation about prenups because too many people have the wrong idea about them, and there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to a prenup. And as soon as people mention a prenup, one of the first things that comes to mind is, well, if you need a prenup, then that must mean that you don't believe in love. Or if you get a prenup, then that means you're already planning to get divorced, and that's only for rich people, and all of these different things that I hear that really isn't necessarily true. So when it comes to prenups, it's not really about setting yourself up for failure. It is about being prepared for what could potentially happen in the future, no matter what that is. And honestly, almost every should have a prenup or consider having one if you have anything of value, if you plan to have anything of value, if you are building something that will be valuable, which hopefully you are. And so it's a conversation that we need to be having more, and that we all need to understand in order for you to be able to make smart moves before you sign the dotted line, for lack of a better description, when it comes to marriage. Because despite what people like to tell you, marriage is more than just a piece of paper. And so I know people always say marriage is just a piece of paper, but it's really more than that. So who should get a prenup? And I know that a lot of you are probably thinking that if you don't have millions in the bank, you don't need a prenup. But the reality is, again, a prenup is not just about what you have right now. I can have nothing right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have something that's valuable in the future, even after you get married. So I'll give you a few examples of situations that you could be in that should make you having a prenup be something that you have on your radar. And when I say prenup, I mean premarital agreement. Those words are interchangeable, but because y'all usually like to use the word prenup, prenuptial agreement, premarital agreement, same thing. And there are many reasons why, but today I'll go ahead and talk about maybe 4 or 5 reasons. So before we jump in, if you're new here, I am Marissa V. Grayson. I am an attorney and mediator and author and speaker, and this is what I do. So we're just gonna call this the chill series because I'm chilling on this couch right now. Very informal. Don't feel like getting dressed up. This is probably how I'm gonna be shooting my videos moving forward anyways, just because it's so much easier for me than having a script and setting up all formally. Nobody got time for that. And y'all seem to like that content better anyway. So moving on. Now, again, lots of different reasons why someone may need to have a prenup if they're getting married, right? Having millions in the bank is not necessarily one of them. It is one of them, but it's not the only one, right? It's not just about, like I said, prenups are not just about what you have now, but it's about what you're building. And so if you are building a business, if you have a career that's thriving, if you are building a brand, if you plan to be rich one day, I don't know, then you probably should consider a prenup. 1, protecting your business and your future income. So let's talk about your business and any future money-making ventures that you may have. Cut that. If you own a business, whether it is a side hustle, a full-blown company, or even if it is just an idea that you have in the works, then a prenup could potentially protect that. Without having a prenup in place, say you get married and things don't work out, right? Then your spouse could have a legal right to a part of your business, depending on the circumstances, but that's a possibility. So that means that in cases when that's a possibility, they could potentially claim ownership of a percentage of your company. If you make more money in the future, they could potentially be entitled to a portion of that money. And in some cases, they could even end up being a person who has a say in how your business will operate in the future if your divorce gets really messy. And listen, I've seen cases where someone will build a business before marriage, right? Then they get married, they don't have a prenup, years goes by, their spouse does some contributions to the business. The marriage builds an interest in the business, And then when it comes to divorce, the spouse who did not put in all of the years to build that business before marriage is entitled to have a percentage of it, to run the business, to call the shots, to take some of the money, and things of that nature. And so when you are building something from scratch, especially, you want to make sure that things are as clean and as clear cut as possible, because not having those things in place makes things messy, right? You don't want to build a whole, for example, clothing brand, right? Have that clothing brand that you've been operating for 5-7 years. And then you get married to someone, and you're married to them, let's say, for 5 years. And during that 5 years, you continue to build your business, and your business continues to bring in money. And then you discover other things that will make your business make even more money and more money, right? And then you get in a divorce. But at the time of the divorce, now your spouse wants a substantial amount of the money and the goodwill that has been built into this business. The valuation that is going to be required in order for you to be able to prove that this business is actually yours, and that she didn't or he didn't contribute to the growth, and that they shouldn't be entitled to it, and all of these other things. The amount of time, energy, and money that you're going to spend to do all of that, you could have just prevented it by having a prenup. And so if your business partners, that's one thing. I'm talking about situations where they may not necessarily be your business partner, but because they're your spouse, they could potentially be entitled to some interest in your business. And so, again, it's just a simple way to make things clear, avoid or minimize any potential confusion, and protect your interests. And another reason you might want to get a prenup: debt. It's something that most people may not necessarily think about when you're getting married. You might not even know how much debt your partner is. I can't tell you the number of people I've met who have no idea how much their partners have in debt. But you gonna mess around and you gonna marry somebody and they have all of this financial baggage and somehow may potentially become responsible for it. Love is love, but debt is debt. And some of y'all are out here about to marry somebody with 6 figures in student loans, or in credit card debt, or gambling debt, or just useless debt. There's so many different things that can mess around and have you on the hook financially. And so when you get married, you want to make sure that you clearly separate what belongs to you, what belongs to them, what you're responsible for, and what they're responsible for, so that if things for whatever reason happen to go south, then you don't end up in a position where you're having to take on their financial burdens that had nothing to do with you just because of the fact that you were married. Another reason you may want to get a prenup is so that you can safeguard your family assets, your inheritances, and things like that, especially if you have family wealth, property, heirlooms, or anything with sentimental value. It's really important that you outline all of this before you get married, because again, once your marriage builds an interest in your things, right? Some states may protect you from inheritances and say if you inherit something, then that's your separate property. But naturally, when you get married, even your separate property could somehow be commingled with the marital property, or the marriage could somehow contribute to it. And you might find yourself in a situation where you inherited your great-great-grandfather's home, right? And then you move your family into it, and then you begin to do all this work on the home to repair it or rebuild it or remodel it and things of that nature. And then you're getting a divorce. And then guess who's going to try to say that they should have some value in that home? Of course, your spouse, right? And what you don't want is to be in a situation where, because of the value that they're requesting in that home, and that because they're asking that that be attributed to them, or that they have some interest in it, now you got to find a way to try to buy them out of the home, or to be able to pay them back whatever the value is that they should be entitled to according to the law, right? Or worse, you don't want to find yourself in a position where you're having to sell your home in order to make sure that you can pay off the value that your spouse would be entitled to. So avoid the headache in advance and get a prenup. Another reason you might want to get a prenup is for clarity and peace of mind. A prenup is not just about protection. It is about clarity. It is about knowing what is going to happen. And when you are getting married, one thing you have to keep in mind is that money is one of the top reasons that couples fight and get divorced. And a prenup will help you set expectations about how you will manage your money together or not, who's going to be responsible for what during the marriage, and what is going to happen in the event of a separation. It's basically a contract or a roadmap that will help make sure that you and your spouse are on the same page before you get married. And the reality is, I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99.9% sure that people don't get married anticipating that they're going to get a divorce, right? Expecting their marriage to not work out. And that's not what a prenup is about. It's really about what is going to happen if your marriage takes a turn, right? Making sure that things are clear, you already have a plan in place, or even during your marriage, you already have guidelines in place based on what you've agreed on so that you can minimize the stress, the anxiety, the frustration, or the confusion surrounding those parts of your marriage. And like I mentioned before, another reason that getting a prenup is a good idea is because it will help you minimize costs and expenses in the long run. Because if you're getting a divorce and you don't have a prenup, the amount of time and energy and money, I know I've said that a million times, that you'll spend trying to litigate the issues in your divorce, trying to prove who gets what and who owns what and who owes what, and you can eliminate that. Because again, if your prenup is done correctly, then it will have everything outlined in the prenup. So at the time of divorce, the terms are already set. You should not have to deal with long, drawn-out court battles, and both of you can move on without all of that unnecessary back and forth and all of those things. Now, that's not to say that someone may not try to come back and say, oh, I didn't understand the terms of the prenup. I was forced to sign it, or whatever, the things that come up. And that's just something you're going to have to deal with if you got to deal with it. But at minimum, you can have the prenup written up, have it done properly so that both parties are represented and all of the waivers are in there that explain that both parties have read it and understand it and all of those things. And just put yourself in a position where you are planning ahead, you are prepared, you are proactive, and putting yourself in a better position so that you don't have to worry about all of this stuff that comes with the ugly divorces. Do yourself that favor and at least begin having the conversation if marriage is something that is on your to-do list. Because being a divorce lawyer, I would say it's one thing that I think really makes the difference between the battles that last a long time and have the biggest headaches and the ones that are clear-cut and straightforward and allow people to move on at a faster pace.